One thing that you did trust, or certainly came to trust very strongly, and it comes up a lot, is you place a huge importance on intuition.
Yeah.
You say in the book, intuition is not a female thing, it's a human thing.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs and Bill Gates agreed. They both very strongly believed in intuition. What does intuition mean to you, and why is it so important in business, do you think?
Well, I think, intuition is the complete antithesis of data, and we do need data, but I have seen so many businesses squashed where they've been successful by a vision, an intuitive connection to the world. Intuition comes from being connected to and I don't want to sound like Oprah here, but I will. She talks about her inner frequency. Sounds nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But connecting your true self to the world actually creates this symbiotic sort of intuition. Intuition can't be done just on your own. Intuition only opens up when you open up. And great leaders and great innovators and great business people often work a lot on intuition. Intuition in corporate businesses often gets suppressed because the data starts and the finances start leading businesses. So often I've seen so many businesses, and I speak to any business people out there, the worst mistakes I've ever made is when I've ignored my intuition. But so often businesses are built on this, with understanding this kind of idea. I've got this idea and I know it's going to work, and you feel connected to the sort of cultural zeitgeist, and you build these great businesses, and then they get successful and they get bought out, normally by investment people, and then they start doing the numbers and they start closing it in, because that starts dictating how the business should be run, and you lose the essence of it. And my favourite quote is Gloria Steinem's, where she just says, if it looks like a duck, and it waddles like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, but you think it's a pig, it's a pig. And it's so true. And the biggest mistakes I've made is when I've just gone against that and looked at logic and reasoning and gone against my intuition.
When have you gone against it?
Oh, God, many times where I've gone for pieces of business and I felt the energy isn't right, or I don't like the client, and I've looked at, and people have gone, my God, it's really good money. And I've gone, yeah, it is, because I like a bit of money as well. And then I've kind of gone against that, or I've gone against it just in simple things where you just feel, I mean, many times in business, I would think, or even people, where I've met people and I think it looks logically right, they look well, and there's something in me that hasn't quite connected, and I've gone back over and looked at all their qualifications, and about my intuition's kind of going, no, but, oh, that looks really good, and I've employed people where it hasn't worked.
You've talked yourself into it, because on paper it sounds
Of course,
right. Yeah.
Of course.
You talk about one of my favourite passages in the book, because it's so rare that you would hear this perspective, but I think many of us share it. You talk about the tyranny of the perfect businesswoman in business profiles and career pages. So the lady who gets up at 4 for tennis coaching and a blow dry and some light yoga or whatever. If that's the case, what kind of female role models do we need in business?
Well, I think the fashion industry and our industry has a lot to answer for on what we put on front covers. If I see a Mal Clooney in another interview, I'll shoot myself. Yes, she's married to George, fantastic. She looks fantastic. And, come on. Those role models that put up for young women are just a bloody joke. I did a school yesterday, and you were there with me, Sally, and those questions came up time and time again about their identity, how they look. That's the currency that's being put out. The currency is you're successful, you're beautiful, yeah, you're doing your Mandarin, you've had 8 kids, you're flying here and you're back in time for supper. And give me a bloody break.
Also, that sounds horrible. That sounds like God. I don't want that life. That sounds so grim.
And interestingly though, I get interviewed a lot for Glossy, and they say, what's Christmas going to be like? You're decking the tree. And I go, no, it's bloody knackering. You don't want to write that. Really Christmas is knackering. We're trying to work out who's going to get the tree, who's going to order this. And you get to the day. And I remember one Christmas, Mel and I it got to the day and we sat down to eat, and all our family looking glamorous, and we were still in our sort of pajamas because we'd cooked and we managed to Jesus, we haven't even put any makeup on. So let's stop breaking all this stuff. Let's start talking honestly. And I want to look look at these women who have achieved, that have done so much, that aren't on the glossy pages. We need to be putting them into the business pages. We need to be putting them into the media. We need to be talking about them. And, you know, great people like Jude Kelly is doing the Women of the World conference, where she travels, and you go to those and you just meet these incredible women who don't give a shit about these kind of shoes. I do, and I don't mind that. I like looking good, but I don't look like this all the time, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And we need to be honest about that. And when you know, when you get the papers papping you, when I'm doing a funny face with my son walking the dog, and you know, I've got no makeup on, they love showing it in the mail. You know, I could stop and just put on a ton of makeup and not do that, but I think, no, sod it. It's your problem if you're going to show me.
I always feel like the biggest favour high-profile women could ever do for other women is to admit that they have paid childcare, go on diets and have Botox.
Absolutely.
I think if they said those three things, everybody else could make a choice. They could go, either I want that, I want to engage in those things, and then I might be a bit like that, or actually I can't be asked and I'm happy being me. But it's the denial that those systems are in place, I think, that causes problems.
And I agree, and I think that honesty is refreshing and it's wonderful. I had a fabulous woman driver who's been driving me around London, and she just said, oh, I said, you look great. And she went, it's the fillers, darling, it's the fillers.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's so fabulous that she talked about that and didn't care.
Davina McCall and Olivia Colman, or whoever, just saying, I get Botox. It's such a joy, isn't it? Or somebody saying, oh, I couldn't live without my nanny, which
it's totally
Anne-Marie
and
Duff
true.
said recently.
Yeah,
it's amazing. You talk about childcare a lot in your book, which I respect, because I've interviewed so many famous women who tell me at interview they have no childcare, while there are literally nannies running around behind our conversation.
Well, I've got my Manny. Hello, say hello to Yvonne. It's you. Come on, I've got a Manny. Put your hand out. There he is, and he's listening to me. And, you know, it can go the other way, because when we were choosing, and Mel said to me, I want a guy to look after Rachel, you know, he's got 2 lesbians. And I said, well, I can play football. I can get out there and play the football. My brother comes around and takes him to football. She goes, no, I want a guy. And it was interesting, so many people won't choose a guy because of the prejudice there.
I had a Manny, and people said, oh, don't you worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the prejudice can go the way, and we talked about that, and I said, you know, so many people, the first thing they think is, oh, God, something dodgy is going to go on. Yeah. And you think this is just deeply unfair. So it works the other way as well.
Yeah. So what responsibilities do senior career women have to those who come after them in that case? Okay, there's the going out with the dog looking a bit rough. That's definitely helpful. But what responsibilities do you have in the workplace for women coming after you?
Well, I think how I work in the workplace is I sit out with my team. I don't have any hierarchy in an office where I feel this aloofness. So often, and we have a desk sharing, so you can turn up at any desk. So all of them will know what's going on in my lives and, you know, what I have to sort out. They'll see that I'm, you know, you have to be real. They'll see that I'm trying to balance stuff. You know, many a time I've had a tear in the office, you know, or I felt frustrated over something. They see when these things, or we've had client meetings where I've just thought, what the hell? How do we navigate this? They're there with you. I think that is the most important part, that you're not aloof, you're not behaving as if life isn't affecting you, or clients or business isn't affecting you. You're there with them. We have what we call a hierarchical competence. We don't have power. So we have, everybody's there who's in positions of competence or seniority to train, to guide, to motivate and inspire the next generation. We have an open thing where we think we don't always get this right. So my MD has what she calls MD for a day, where she will have the most junior people who have just come out of university, or people that work for 2, 3 years or 5 years, with saying, this is what we would do if we were in your shoes. So that gives them this confidence and that they're being heard.
Well, and no doubt you're learning things back that you hadn't thought of.
Totally and utterly. And the other thing is one of the really important things that we do is when we have reviews and appraisals, we don't call them sort of, you know, is it appraisal? What's the word where you sit down on a one-to-one? No, the old-fashioned word.
Review.
Review or job, no, isn't it, when you're going for your, is it appraisal? Yeah, appraisal, maybe it is.
It's grim.
I'm tired.
The classic appraisal is grim.
It's grim, and it's also about a one-to-one, and it's appraising you, and you think, well, that just sounds like I'm just being judged. So we break that, and what you do is you have, you know, chats where you're being inspired and motivated, and you talk about issues that you're having, and they will be open discussions. And then When you're coming for your chat with your line manager, 6 or 7 people would have written about what they think you're working like. So it's not just that one person who's in charge of whether you grow or not. Because often we've worked for people that just don't like us.
A person is holding you back.
Holding you back. And so I get reviewed the same. And it really, I didn't sleep for one night after I read them. And it was just really upset me because I thought I was just being so fabulous. And someone wrote, Mary only speaks to the people that inspire her. And I was like, that is so true. It's really true. And I was like, oh my God, who wrote it? Who wrote that? And it was so true. And so, I had to think about that because the people who were maybe quiet just weren't, and just a little bit inhibited, I was sort of maybe passing by I just had to really work on it. So you don't get away with it. So then you're unable to come in and be this hierarchical power that stops things happening because you aren't. It's about everybody.
I'm going to get you to read your values in a sec, but I wanted to briefly touch on failure, because what you're talking about there is hearing uncomfortable things and acknowledging uncomfortable truths. You discuss in the book a very painful perceived failure when the government role as the retail troubleshooter became bogged down in arguments and party politics and insufficient funding, and it led to you feeling like a failure. But what struck me is how you owned it instead of attempting to conceal it. Is owning failure critical to how you at Portas Agency work now?
Completely. If everyone was a failure, I'm not sure we'd have an agency. But, and there is a big but, we all fail. And we all do stuff that's just not good enough. And we all do stuff that we just think, I didn't do the best on that. And we all don't win pieces of business. Or we have meetings with clients where they say, I don't like that, that doesn't feel good. And it's part of who we are. It's absolutely part of who we are. And when I was doing the government report, what I forgot was it was politics. So you just had these pieces being written about you in the Daily Mail. And I just remember waking up one Sunday and there's just this headline in the Mail said, Mary, Queen of Flops. And you went, oh my God, this is just me they're talking about and writing about. And it was just completely, you felt like you'd been filleted. The initial instinct, fight them, right, let's go. My agent's long, right, okay, let's get a press release out. And then you go, that isn't true. That is someone's opinion. That is someone who's writing about me, and a lot of millions of people are going to read it. But if I fight that negative energy, I am just going to fuel this more. I know me. I know what I've done. And I'm just going to continue doing what I believe to be right. I'm not sure I'd have been able to do that 15 years ago, but I was. And I got out my little handbook by my favourite Buddhist nun called Pema Chodron, and I just read and try and connect myself back to what are the decent values in life. And I remember having a phone call from another journalist on one of those papers, that just went mad trying to get stories. Oh, we've been to this town and someone spent on a Peppa Pig blow-up doll. Right. And that was £300. What a waste of money! And you're like, oh, Christ. And I just remember sitting there and I said, he felt really young. It was a young guy. And I said, how old are you? And he said, why? And I said, I just want to know how old you are. He said, I'm 24. And I said, do you really like writing and ringing me about this? And he went, not particularly, Mary, but it's a story. And I went, yeah, but do you really want to write like this? Does this make you feel good? And we had this real kind of spiritual encounter over the phone with a journal from the Daily Mail. And he wrote the story, but he wrote it kind of nicely. And I thought, I've actually changed someone's head on the Daily Mail. I don't know what the editor thought. I mean, it was about that big. They probably thought, oh, we'll just put it in that little corner. But I felt that actually connecting and calling out that sort of behaviour and saying, that's affecting me.
Absolutely.
That's affecting me. You might think I'm some, know-all, whatever, but that's affecting me, made me vulnerable, made me honest, made me talk about failure, and made a better result. And we need to do that. And I am 20 times better when anybody in the business goes, I'm fucked up.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, my son's sitting there.
I've said wankers, it's fine.
Yeah. And it's just so much better because we all do. And if you create the space where people can do that, everybody pulls around to help and support.
But at this point that you're talking about, it was at the height of your success, but I think it's fair to say the wheels kind of fell off emotionally, didn't they, for you? You know, it was an odd time. You'd found a TV project with Gordon Ramsay hellish. I literally cannot imagine how. But, I mean, he's the perfect example of that alpha male culture. You felt really unsatisfied by how your very successful agency was being run by you. And so you kept a notebook.
I did.
And you wrote down what was important to you, what were you good at, what were you not good at, and what your values were. And it'd be great if you could share your values because they then moulded the relaunch of your agency.
Yeah, they did. This was a sort of culmination of a time where I was just doing lots of TV. The business was great. I had a fashion label. I was doing much. And what happens in life? You go on a roller coaster, you kind of go on an escalator, and sometimes you're not sure you want to get off the next floor, and you think, why am I on this escalator? Because I've got to keep going this way up. And sometimes people put you on that, and sometimes your ego puts you on it. And I was doing this show with Gordon Ramsay, and we had to compete against each other, and it was just the worst thing I could have ever possibly done. It was a hotel, and he had to run all the kitchens, and I was running all the hotel, and we had to get marks from people on who was the best, whether it was my service or whether it was his. And he's incredibly alpha. And I think the channel thought, how fabulous, she's alpha too, let's go. And at the time, my little baby son had just been born, and I was filming this and going home, and each night it was live on telly, and every night I came in, Mel would just look at me like, tragic, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And
had you crossed your intuition to do it? Had you felt instinctively it wasn't you?
No, I hadn't. This is how unevolved I still was. I hadn't, because I just thought this is it was a major show, huge amounts of money. Of course I would be the person that they put into that, of course.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, this is hell on earth. And at the time, you know, Horatio was born. Horatio had just come into the world. My eldest son was just going out into the world to university, and everything just kind of started to be questioned about values. So I kept on this little notepad. It took me a year to make the change, but I wrote down all the things that I felt strongly about, that I loved, and all the things that I didn't love. And I thought about these kind of values that really made me feel strong. Was it about being alpha and being aggressive and having a voice that was louder than, or was it more than that? And I wrote, courage, not bravery. Bravery is rooted in the physical, and courage is derived from core, the Latin word for heart. And I like to feel courageous, but don't be ridiculously brave. Brave is sometimes just, well, we know if you're being brave, there's a huge amount of risk. Collaboration. I love collaborating, working with other people, and I just don't feel I can be successful unless I'm surrounded and supported by great people. Vision over ambition. The first is Michelle Obama, the second's Lady Macbeth. You know, writing down and realising the differences and where I'd fallen into these different strengths, I felt was important to me, that was grounded in perseverance and emotional openness, and not dominance and power. And I felt dominance and power was something that I, in my life, felt I had to have ever since my parents died, and that I felt that I could control my life. And that I went for excellence. Perfection. I kept on chasing perfection, not excellence. And, you know, excellence is a goal, but perfection is just a bloody straitjacket. You know? So I wrote all those down, and as I wrote these down, I started to create, then how will that make you work? And caring was one of them, giving something back to those around me. And I found this quote, which is resilience. The reed bends in turbulent winds, and the oak stands stiff and breaks. And just being able to be flexible. And I just kept on looking at these qualities and thinking, that's how I feel as a woman. And I thought, well, how do I reflect that in my work? And how do I reflect that in the people that I connect with, because it's a bit like those people who are yogis and they're wonderful and they're spiritual, and then they go into the office, they go, right, you bastard. Sort of, that's a bit extreme, but you do meet and you think they can't change those. We should be able to bring this into all our lives. And I was lucky enough that I had a business that I could affect and say, I want to change and I want to run in a different way around these values. It sort of shocked a lot of people who were on the board, because I thought if we didn't have businesses that wanted to work with us in that way, then we would walk away from them. I felt kind of like, yay, let's do this. But we were able to shift and change our business to be all around these values, and putting at the heart of it kindness. And someone said to me, it was Janet Street Porter. I had to do Loose Women. I did have to do Loose Women. And she said, what about your deadline? When I was in the papers, you've got a deadline, you've got to get it out, you've got to sort it. And I said, well, we're not all sitting around doing kumbaya and chanting at work. But kindness is different from being nice. Kindness is very different. And I can sack someone and be kind, truthfully, and say this isn't working, but you can do it with kind. People can leave with respect and dignity at the heart of what they are. Because we've all been in work where it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked work is about a relationship between many parts. So you can't just say you're crap. There's places we fit into, there's places we excel, and there's places we thrive. So kindness can be done. And do you know what? Kindness is just really about being decent human beings and going for the right outcome. But you never hear about it talked in business. You just don't.